kids, five baby moms, right? Like, how do you balance all the personalities and the nuances between co-parenting with nine kids and five baby mothers? I'm pretty sure there's some hurdles that you got to get over. How do you balance it all?
When we talk about the lack of wealth in black America, oftentimes we talk about, white supremacy and racism. But today I want to talk to you about a different explanation. Not saying that this is the only one, but this is another angle to look at it from. And especially when you start to talk about generational wealth, because typically wealth is built over generations and sustained over generations. And so when you look at the clip I just played, now granted these are celebrities, entertainers, so that's a little bit different, but what they have going on, a lot of other people have going on to varying degrees. Everybody might not have nine kids with five different women. Some of us do have two kids with two different men or two different women. Some of us may have three or four kids with multiple parents. Or some of us may just have one child, but the majority of the child's life, we were separated from the parent because we broke up shortly after they were born. And so, let's address this. It becomes increasingly harder to build generational wealth when the generations were not raised in a two-parent household with the parents who had them. It becomes harder. When you got a kid over here and a kid over there, it's different. All of a sudden you have stuff like, oh, my mama don't like her mama, or my mama don't get along with daddy right now because he with this woman. It's different. There is no substitute for you having one set of kids with one person and y'all stay together, y'all go the distance. There's a whole lot of different issues and problems that arise when you spread yourself over multiple households. And I know we like to say, oh, my kids are raised properly, they didn't want for nothing. Listen, practically it's just not true. Once you place yourself in a situation where you got multiple kids by multiple people, or you have multiple kids by one person, or one child with one person, but y'all not together, y'all not living in a household, now all of a sudden there's a lot of things the child doesn't get. They don't get to see two people that love each other, that created life on purpose, raise a child together, get the masculine and the feminine together, working in tandem at the same time. They don't get to see two people build up, two people make it through, two people build one another up. They don't get to see that. At best, what they get is they get masculinity when they're at mom's house, and then masculinity when they're at dad's house, then femininity when they're at mom's house. But they don't get the two together, working together at the same time. They don't get two parents that are working and building one another up and building up the family together. They get mom, and she's doing her thing, and maybe dad is helping her out financially. And then they got dad doing his own thing. I mean, just practically, when you talk about people passing away, we already know that families and children, they already going to argue and bicker over the inheritance and what's left behind and what's in the will. And this is when they were raised in the house with mom and dad. Even in the parents' passing, they still argue and bicker even in those situations. So how much worse do you think it is when you got to go and figure out who's going to get what with your half brother and your half sister? And my mama never liked her mama no way. It's a lot harder to pass down business, wealth, legacy, a vision for the future when you have multiple children in multiple different places. Or when you have a single parent raising the child by themselves. Like we always talk about generational wealth, but we're not. The thing is, we focus when we talk about generational wealth. We tend to focus more on the generations. I mean, we tend to focus more on the wealth, and the generations are an afterthought. In other words, we're more focused on the money, but we're not focused on the family. Because how do you get generational wealth? First of all, you have to have one successful, functioning, productive generation. That's step one. Step two is they have to then raise and produce a generation coming after them that is also functional, healthy, and productive to pass down what they built to them so that they can maintain it and build on it. And then and you repeat it over and over and over again. That's how that's done. Unfortunately, for the most part, a lot of times what we have in Black America is we have a generation where mom and dad may or may not have been together, but but somehow they found a way to make some money, right? They found a way to make some money. Now, while they were out making their money, they were having their fun and trying to be pseudo celebrities or whatever they were getting into, and so they didn't properly pour into the children. Maybe they were together to raise the children. Maybe they weren't. Maybe there were one set of kids. Maybe there wasn't. So then the parents pass away and kids weren't properly taught how to take things to the next level and maintain. And before you know it, it's all gone. Sometimes it's all gone before the parent even dies. That's all I'm saying. When we start talking about racial wealth gap and generational wealth, we're not really talking enough about the family. We're super focused on the money, but we're not nearly focused enough on the family that makes the money and then properly rears the children to maintain and add on to the money. That's the part that we're not getting to. That's the part we're not getting to. Because there's a lot of Black people who find a way by hook or crook to make a good amount of money in their lifetime. But let's look at how did they live? What was their family structure? How did they raise up their children? What are their children doing? Now, let's just be honest. All the money, Michael Jackson had all the money in the world. He also had children. How were his children raised and reared? Also had siblings. How together and all that are they? Like, come on now. There's a lot of us. Like, I don't want to talk about celebrities too much, but I mean, because there's everyday people. Like, because think about it, there's steps and progressions before you even get to wealth. You start off at, let's say you start off, average income, 40, 50,000. Maybe you make your way on up to 80, 90. Maybe you get married. You buy a house. Like before we get to wealth, can we start at step one? Men and women finding ways to be self-sufficient, to earn a honest and decent living. Then they meet one another, they come together, they find a way to have a healthy relationship together. They're intentional about starting a family. They stay together, don't break up. They acquire a home or a business or a property. They steward over it properly, and then they can pass it down to the children. That's step one. Before you start talking about wealth. Because let's be real in Black America. Can we be honest? We're talking about generational wealth. A lot of us are not being passed down anything. Before you start talking about wealth, a lot of us, when our parents die, we're not even passed down like a few $1,000s. If we're going to be honest, a lot of us, when our parents pass away, it's a financial burden. We got to find the money for the funeral or find the money to bury him. And then we find out that the house ain't been updated in a long time and they're behind on this and the property taxes. And so now you got to sell the family house because it ain't been maintained, it ain't been managed, it's been refinanced, it's behind. So let's be honest. For a lot of us, parents die, you got to come out of pocket to bury them, and then you got to sell the house just to clear the books. So you're not really left with nothing while we talking about generational wealth. Like a lot of times when we talk about blackness and black community and all this, we want to skip steps. Like it's a whole lot of steps before you start talking about wealth. First, we got to talk about can the two people that have the child stay together long enough to make it work and raise the children properly? Can these two people take decent enough care of themselves where they can live a decent life? Now, we understand car accidents and cancer. We're not talking about that. But can we take care of ourselves to barring, a chronic illness or, unexpected thing? We can live to see 70 years, live to see our children become grown and maybe see grandchildren. Can we do that? Can we get some sort of insurance so that way at least when we pass away, our children can get $5,000 to pay for the funeral so they don't got to come out of pocket or do a GoFundMe? Can we do that? Can we find a way, even if the house is only a $200,000 house, can we find a way to have that paid off so that way when we pass away, the funeral is paid for, and then the children can figure out, are we going to keep this house or are we going to sell it and split up the money? Even if we just sell the house and we only get $20,000. Like, can we start there before we start talking about wealth? Because like I just said, many of us, man, we're going to be in a hole when our parents go. A lot of us have already experienced that. Talking about wealth, man, we was in the hole. It was stressful. Trying to get rid of this and get rid of that and take care of this and deal with siblings that you ain't, like, come on now. So before we start, if we're going to talk about generational wealth, we got to focus on the generations. Let's focus on the people, not the money.